right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Gabowski, and I'll be your host for today. We are racing our way through February, and February is always one of our favorite months here because we kick all the men out and we host incredible women in science, exploration, adventure, and conservation all month long. So if you haven't had a chance to visit the website recently, take a few minutes and visit exploringbytheseat.com. We still have a ton of events coming up to wrap up our February, so don't miss out. And we'll probably release another newsletter on the weekend. We have some new events to announce and start talking about March because it's just around the corner. Now, today we're going to take a little trip to Kenya. I'm really excited to have Jessicah Kurere joining us. She is going to help us learn a bit about what it's like to be a veterinarian in Kenya, where wild animals and domestic animals are mixing on a daily basis. So she is the lead veterinarian working with a community animal health initiative program with Ewaso Lions. She treats domestic animals who have faced injuries through carnivore attacks. She vaccinates dogs and cats against deadly diseases and increases awareness about these diseases through a One Health approach using education and much, much more. So I'm going to bring Jessicah in live with us right now. Hey, Jessicah, how are you doing today?
Fine, thank you, Joe. How are you doing?
I'm good. It is always great to have you with us. And I know that you are in the field today as well. So even better.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having us.
All right. Excellent. We've got classrooms in Canada, classrooms in the US. We've got classrooms in camera spots, classrooms on YouTube. So they're going to have lots of questions for you when the time comes. We'll do a little Kahoot quiz together as well. But for now, I'd like to let you take over and take us into your world, your adventures for a little bit.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe. I'm really excited to share with you a bit of our work that we're doing here in Kenya, where I am. So I'll share really quickly and then have you see my screen. And then I'll take you on an adventure of where I am right now, here in northern Kenya, a place called Samburu. Great. So I'm really glad to be here. My name is Jessicah Kurere, and I'm a veterinarian by profession. And I work for Ewaso Lions, which is based in Kenya. And our work is to conserve lions and other wild carnivores in Kenya, and specifically in northern Kenya. So I'll tell you a little bit of where I am right now. As you've heard, it's about the life of a field veterinarian. So I am always here throughout the year. I'm actually really a little bit of my time is when I'm at home, but this is now my home. This is where I'm always at. So where I am right now is in Africa. And then we go to Kenya, which is in East Africa. And then in Kenya, we go to the northern part of Kenya, which is called Samburu. One of the areas is called Samburu. And it's shown here in the map. So most of the area looks like this, how it looks on the picture. It's vast, it's huge, acres and acres of land, and it has no people living in it. It's very sparsely populated. The communities are not living all over. It's very remote. It has a big river that snakes its way through the whole landscape, and that is the only source of water for people, for livestock, and the wildlife that live in this area. So the whole of northern Kenya is mostly pastoralist community, and the land looks like this. It's just vast land, a big landscape where people and animal live together, coexist. So there's no boundary that the wildlife live here or the people live here. They all live together within this one landscape. And people are free to move through the landscape, and the wildlife are also free to move through the landscape. So this is where I am right now. So the pastoralist community that I keep talking about, when I say pastoralist, I mean that the way of life for the people is keeping livestock. So the livestock are their bank, their food, their livelihood. So people don't store money in a bank, they store it by keeping livestock. And this is part of their life and part of their culture. So you have someone owning hundreds of sheep and goats. And as you can see, the donkey is our source of transport. So we don't have a lot of cars here. So people move around. As I say, we move around in search of water and pasture. So the donkeys is our source of transport. So we have a lot of sheep, a lot of goat, a lot of camels, we have a lot of cows, and that is the source of livelihood for the people here. And the river here that you see is the Ewaso Nyiro that I showed you. This is the only source of water, the permanent source of water for the lions, for the elephants, for the children, for the donkeys, for the people here. So this is how our life looks like here in northern Kenya. And going back to wildlife conservation, which is the work that we do here at Ewaso Lions. So we work to conserve lions and other wild carnivores in northern Kenya. And so, as I mentioned, we live together with wildlife. So we have 3 reserves where the government has set aside where wildlife can stay. But majority of the wildlife in Kenya, over 70% of the wildlife live outside protected areas. So they live within community lands like where I am right now. So we have lions that live within the park, but we have a lot of lions that live outside the park. Like where I am right now, we have a lion that lives down the hill, just not too far from our camp. So we have a lot of wildlife living within the community areas and with people. And this is one of the lions that lives in the park, but we also have lions that live inside and outside protected areas. So as I mentioned, they are wild carnivores and they're living side by side with people who own sheep and goat. And sometimes the wild carnivores like the lions or the hyenas may come and attack domestic animals. And people are not very happy because, as I said, this is their only source of livelihood. So they also keep quite a lot of dogs within the community. So dogs play a very big role within this community. So when people are out herding during the day, the young boys are going to herd the livestock so that they can eat grass. They go out with the dogs and the dogs alert them. If there's a hyena around or a leopard around, the dogs would bark and the herders would know there's a predator around. And that is how they reduce conflict. So dogs play a very big role within this community. So if you have 100 sheep and goat, you probably have 4 or 5 dogs. If you have many, livestock, sheep and goat, you have many more dogs. So within our conservancy, which is called Westgate Conservancy, we have about a population of about 800 dogs within our community. So they play a very big role. So our community is very diverse. We have dogs, we have cats, we have people, we have wildlife as well. But unfortunately, the landscape is really changing. So as you can see, this is how our land looks like now. And there's a really big difference when you compare of how green this area looks like. This is a protected area. So our community land looks like this because of climate change. So there's very little grass. And as I said, our source of livelihood is livestock feeding on grass. And this really impacts our way of life. And not only people, but also wildlife. The lion needs food. And the food for the lion also needs food. So the warthog or the antelope needs food. So the lions are also struggling because they don't have food to eat. And most of the time when they don't have food to eat that is in the wild, they end up coming and eating domestic animals such as sheep and goat. And people are not very happy when it comes to that side. And so Ewaso Lions has started many programs. We have had warriors coming into the programs and they're talking to their fellow warriors because the warriors are the ones that are going out to herd the livestock. And they have included women. We have a women's program and the women are working towards restoring the landscape. As you saw, the land is very bare. So the women are working towards growing grass. And we're also involving children, just like you, majority who are watching now. So we have a Lion Kids Camp that are bringing children together. And within our community land, it is owned by the community elders. So the children that we are trying to bring on board are the ones that are going to be leaders, are the ones who are going to be impacting future conservation work within their own landscape. So we're very happy that we include them. So this is part of our program. So just going back to the program now that I help run under Ewaso Lions, as I mentioned, there are very many dogs and there are many threats that are coming within this community. There's no grass so that lions don't have food. There's a lot of killing from the community because they're coming to eat their own livestock and attack them and the people are not very happy. Sometimes the lions are injured. So we have a wildlife veterinarian who's on standby. So when the lion is injured, we call her and she comes and treats the lion. But there are other challenges that are coming up. One of them is diseases. So there are very many infectious diseases that may come up. And by the time it gets to the lion or the hyena or the wild dog and the wildlife veterinarian is called, it's often really too late. One of the diseases that I'll talk about briefly is rabies. So rabies is endemic in our country, meaning it's always there with us. And as you can see in this picture, this is a rabid dog that has the rabies virus, and it's going to attack a lion. So when this dog attacks this lion and the lion gets rabies, unfortunately, there's no treatment for rabies. So this is a very serious disease. And most of the times, the dogs, because we have a large population of dogs within our community, they are the ones that are the drivers of these diseases, and hence why we're focusing on dogs. Another disease that I'll talk about is canine distemper. This is a painted dog that was actually found in 2019 within our community. And this dog has an infectious disease called canine distemper. And by the time we found this painted dog within our community with this disease, we had already found that months later, the domestic dogs had already had the disease and they were sick. And by the time it got to this painted dog, it was already too late. And so that is why we're working closely to monitor the domestic animal species, the dogs and the cats, so that we can be a buffer in between. By the time the disease comes to the interface and goes to the wildlife, we'll already have known, and the wildlife veterinarian will be aware. And so because of those challenges of diseases of rabies and canine distemper and trying to prevent those diseases from coming to our wild carnivores, Ewaso Lions started a program called Kura's Pride. Kura is actually our dog here in camp. He's called Kura. And so we named the program after Kura. And this is in 2019, and this is me in the picture. During this time, I had come here as a volunteer, and we did vaccination. So we started out as doing annual vaccination of the dogs and the cats against rabies and canine distemper. So we used to do this, and between when we started and now, we've done over 6,000 dogs and cats vaccinated so far. But we also saw the challenge of constantly monitoring the health of the dogs and cats because the vaccinations was annual. So there was a really big need of having a vet fully here who would constantly be watching on the domestic animal species, especially the carnivores, and ensure that there's no disease that would cross over from the wildlife to the domestic carnivores or from the domestic carnivores to the wildlife, like rabies and canine distemper that I have just mentioned. And so we started a mobile veterinary unit, which is a partnership between many organizations that are working with small animal practice, that are working with wildlife conservation, and wildlife veterinarians coming together. And so this is part of the smaller team. We have a wildlife veterinarian, we have a small animal veterinarian, and it makes such a diverse team so that we come together and work at the interface. So we are a buffer between the domestic animals and the wildlife so that we ensure that no diseases come to the wild carnivores, especially lions, as we're trying to conserve them. So as I showed you in the second slide, our landscape is very vast and it's very large. Most of the time, I'm always trekking because our cars, it's very hilly here and there's a lot of riverbeds. Sometimes it has water and you'd have to leave your car behind. So we have to go to the community. So this is how our car looks like. It has a table. As you can see, this puppy is very comfortable on the table that is attached to our car. And I was examining him so that I can give him his annual vaccinations. And most of the time, children have known the car. So they often stop me and they tell me, stop, come and look at my kitten, come and look at my puppy. So most of the time, my journeys are usually very long because I'm always stopped along the way. And I'm very happy to be able to attend to these animals through that. So some of the activities that we do includes treatment. This dog is called Berus. Berus was bitten by a puffer a while back, so we were called, and that was an emergency for us, and we ran to him, and we gave her treatments for that. So this is just one of the examples of the many treatments that we do under the mobile veterinary unit. We also provide population control services for the community. So we do space for the female dogs and we give castrations for the male dogs so that we can have a manageable population. And this is Solomon, who's our Kura's Pride officer, taking care of a dog that we have just done surgery. As you can see, it's not very fancy because we are very remote, we have no reception, and we are using a tree to hold our intravenous fluid. We were giving this dog fluid. So it's quite an adventure and very diverse where we work at. We also do vaccinations every year. We vaccinate against rabies and canine distemper. And this is a lady who's holding Lingatun's vaccination card after Lingatun was vaccinated. And that is part of our routine work to prevent these diseases before they occur through vaccinations. One of the other activities that we do, this was the second day after I had come, immediately after I was hired, and we were called that a lion had attacked a camel in one of the areas. So we rushed there and we treated this camel and 2 others that were injured by a lion. So sometimes when wild carnivores attack domestic animals and they sustain injuries, the community have our numbers and they call us. But sometimes getting to the animals is quite an adventure. We had been called during this day to go and attend to a camel that was attacked by a lion. And the Ewaso Nyiro River was full of water, and we were baffled what we were going to do. So we left our car behind right across the river, and we took our supplies by foot, and we crossed the river by foot, and we walked towards the camel that was attacked. So it's quite an adventure walking here. Sometimes the road is full of water, sometimes we're stuck. It's quite an adventure, but we always meet those challenges. One of the most important things that we do as well is constantly monitoring these diseases so that they don't get to our wild carnivores. And in this homestead, I had been called because a rabid dog had come into this homestead and had bitten a few of the camels. So I had come to this house to investigate whether the camels are okay and what we can be able to do for them to be okay. And this is early in the year. We had an outbreak of canine distemper last year, and we had quite a number of dogs sick with canine distemper. So this was part of our work to ensure that they're all okay, treating them, and also ensuring that the infectious disease does not cross to the wild carnivores that we are trying to conserve. One of the most exciting things and children within our communities love is we have a film that is in the Samburu language, which is the native language here. So we gather everyone at night and we project on a canvas, and everyone comes, the women, the children, the elders, the warriors, and we watch a film that talks about responsible animal ownership. And it's usually quite fun, and the children really love it, and they always remember the lessons. We also have a women's program. We always reach out to the women because they play a very big role within the community. So this is one of the posters that we have showing how canine distemper looks like and how it spreads. And we had just finished a lesson with the women learning about responsible animal ownership and these infectious diseases. One of our favorite things is Solomon as well. We usually go to schools. As I said, these children will be the managers of these conservancies and the landscape that we're living in, and the future of the lions will be in their hands. So we are always trying to invest in them. And as you can see, these children were quite excited, and they had a lot of information on lions and how to take care of their dogs. Most of the time, the children are the ones responsible for the dogs within our community. So it was quite exciting to talk to them. And this is our bigger aim, as Joe said, One Health, so that we are constantly saying that our health as people, the health of the lions and the health of the domestic animals are all interconnected into one bigger picture that is called One Health. And through One Health, we'll be able to protect the dogs so that they're healthy, and thereby also protecting the wild carnivores such as lions. And that is how we are conserving lions through dog and cat health and ensuring they're healthy. So thank you so much for listening to my talk, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right. Well, Jessicah, thank you so much. You definitely have an exciting career, definitely different than the veterinarians we're used to here, where we bring our dogs and cats and other animals to the building and get them looked at. So they can see it's a challenge sometimes just to get to each different site. And sometimes it's a dog or a cat, maybe it's a camel, or maybe the wildlife vet is out there trying to help a lion or one of those painted dogs. So definitely looks like every day is an adventure.
It really is. It's quite diverse. Dogs and cats and camels and donkeys. It's quite diverse and interesting.
All right. Well, we are going to take a few minutes here to play some Kahoot. Let's see how well our students were paying attention today. So if you visit kahoot.it, it's going to ask you for a PIN number, and it's right there. I'm also going to share my screen, and that is going to bring the Kahoot number and PIN right up front for you. So just bear with me for a moment here. Okay, here we go. So if you have one-to-one technology, maybe you have a Chromebook or a tablet at your seat, you can join that way. If not, your teacher could just join at the front of the classroom and you could shout out your answers to him or her. If you can't get in to the event, that's perfectly fine. You can just shout out your answers or keep track and see how you do. I see a few students or a few classrooms starting to join behind the scenes. I believe we have 5 questions ready to go today. There is some true and false. There is some multiple choice. And then the quicker you get those questions answered, the more points you're going to get. There is 20 seconds for each question. So we'll give it a few more seconds here. Jessicah, maybe while we wait for a few more students to join, I'll ask you one of the questions that's come in from YouTube so far. So Mr. Ferguson's group are some 4th and 5th graders in Erin, Ontario, and they're wondering if you have an idea about how many animals you've vaccinated so far, you've helped protect.
Yes. So between 2019, when we only had the vaccination campaign, we vaccinated 6,000 dogs and cats within the landscape. And with having the program, we have vaccinated over 500 dogs and cats. And we're actually planning our annual vaccination campaign in a few weeks. So that's exciting.
All right. Well, it sounds like you're making some great progress. I see a few groups saying they're ready for the Kahoot. I still see a couple students or classrooms popping in. So I'm going to give it just another maybe 30 seconds, and then we will go live and we will see how the students do. Let me see if there's another question we can grab from here. So if you are tuning in via YouTube, don't be shy. Use that chat sidebar. So another question here is, what's your favorite animal to work with? Do you have a favorite?
That's a very hard question to answer. I'd say because now I've become the custodian of the dogs and cats, I just enjoy working with the dogs and cats now because I get to hear quite a lot of stories about them that no one really knows.
All right, very cool. Well, let's get it going. Don't worry if you weren't able to get into the Kahoot. Students can still shout out their answers. They can keep track and see how they do. So here we go. Couple seconds to get situated, and our first question will come up front and center. All right, a nice, easy multiple choice to get you started. Where is Jessicah joining us from today? Where in Africa is she? Is she in Zambia? Was she in Kenya? Is she in Botswana? Or is she joining us from Tanzania today? So let's get those answers in as quick as you can. Nice warm-up question to get us going, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into some of the things that Jessicah talked about today. All right, good job, crew. She's absolutely joining us from Kenya, northern Kenya today. Very cool. The cheerful emu is holding down that top spot. Let's get to a true and false. Livestock is like money to many villagers in Kenya. Is that true or is that false? That livestock is like the bank. It's like money to many villagers living in Kenya. 5 more seconds to get something locked in there. All right, that is absolutely true. And like you said, Jessicah, that leads to a lot of conflict because, you know, a lion or a hyena or something attacking your livelihood is very serious.
Yes.
All right, let's see what happened to our leaderboard. Cheerful emu is holding on tight. Let's go to another multiple choice about how much wildlife lives outside protected areas in Kenya. Is it 10%, 40%, 55%, or as much as 70% of wildlife lives outside of protected areas in Kenya? So Jessicah mentioned this right at the beginning. It could be a tricky one. All right, we had some mixed answers, but most went with 70%, and that's absolutely right. So you can see that there is a lot of opportunity for human and wildlife to mix when 70% are outside of those protected areas. All right, we are on to a true and false. Climate change is not having an impact on the landscape in Kenya. So climate change, it's just not having that big of an impact in Kenya. Is that true or is that false? 5 more seconds to get that answer locked in. True or false? All right. Good job, crew. That is false. We saw the picture of that brown landscape, the lack of the rainfall, the lack of grass for the food that the lions eat, and then that pushes them to go after livestock and things like that. One more question to go. The cheerful emu is just not giving up, but the scores are close. It is a Final question, pick 2 answers here. Click 2 diseases that are impacting wildlife in Kenya. So pick 2, rabies, kennel cough, canine distemper, or heartworms. Which 2 did Jessicah talk about? And the vaccines today. You have to click 2 answers here. It's a bit different than our normal questions. All right. Good job, crew. It is rabies. It is canine distemper. Let's take a look at our podium. 3rd place, we've got the zany iguana. In 2nd place, we've got, the cheerful emu. Someone has stolen 1st place. It is the red hare sneaking in right at the end. All right. Good job, crew. Let's get back to Jessicah. Let's get back to some more Q&A before we wrap up for today. Awesome stuff. All right. Jessicah, what do you think? Some Q&A action?
Yes, let's go for it.
All right. So if you are on YouTube, don't be shy. Use that chat bar. Let us know what your questions are. For now, though, let's start bringing in some camera classroom. So Miss Collins and Miss Darling's crew are hanging out together. They are in New York. Let's bring them in front and center. How are we doing today, New York? All right. Let's grab that mic. It's still on mute.
Perfect. Jessicah, have you ever been close enough to a lion where you got the opportunity to touch it, or no?
That's a great question. Yes, I have. We actually did a surgery not too long ago. We had one of the lions that was sick. So we had the wildlife veterinarian dart, and we were all assisting to ensure that the lion was okay. So yes, I have. But the lion was under anesthesia.
All right. If you have another one handy, let's grab a second question there. While someone does come up, if they do have a second question, did you get to see the paw? They're just massive.
Very big, huge, massive. I was really quite impressed. It was very interesting to see.
All right, very cool. Here comes our second question.
Okay. Have you ever got bitten by rabies or affected by rabies?
All right. So most of the time people get rabies when they're bitten by rabid dog, suspected rabid dog, or they're scratched. So that is how the disease spread. I haven't. So what we do is we always get an injection. It's called a pre-exposure for rabies. So anyone working at risk, so I'm sure even in your country, veterinarians and anyone working with small animals is required to have a vaccination beforehand, because we're always working with animals at risk. Sometimes they may not have rabies, but they can still bite you, they can still scratch you. So it's always good to get an injection before, which is called a pre-exposure. But if in case I'm scratched, sometimes I am by cats or dogs, I always go back to the hospital and I get a post-exposure for rabies.
All right. Thank you for those great questions, New York. Okay, we are going to bring in another group here. I see someone waiting so patiently with Miss Plant's group in Mississauga, Ontario. Let's bring them in. There they are. How you doing, everyone?
Hi. I have a question about the camels who were bitten by lions. Did any of them die, or did they all survive?
Yes. So they all survived, the ones that we were able to treat. Sometimes the attack end up fatal. So sometimes we don't get even to treat the camels when they're attacked. But yes, they're all doing very well.
All right. That's awesome. We're going to jump to the second.
Hi, Jessicah. I have a question. Have you guys ever had a side effect for any medicine, or like something that's worse than the disease itself?
That's a very good question. It's very important. So whenever you're thinking about vaccinating animals against a disease, it's always good to ensure that the animal is healthy. So as I mentioned, one of the diseases that we have been talking about is canine distemper. So there are reports that if you do vaccinate a dog that has canine distemper, you might have a reaction and the dog might become even more sick. So that's a very good question. So before you vaccinate an animal, you have to ensure that the dog is very healthy and is in good condition so that you can be able to vaccinate against that disease. So it can happen.
Okay.
All right. Great question.
Yes.
So we'll probably have time to swing back your way. So we'll see if we can steal one more question. We have some 2nd and 3rd grade students joining us in Ontario. We're going to go to them next for a question, but I want to grab a YouTube question first here. So we've got a group of students joining us. Where are they joining us from? Oh, from the Ottawa area here in Canada. And they would like to know, are you ever scared when you go out into the field to deal with the animal? So, you know, even dogs and cats who are sick or things like that. Are there ever times you're frightened?
Sometimes I am, because some of the dogs, I don't know whether they don't like to be touched. Some of them are not used to being touched the way we pet our dogs all the time. Sometimes the camel might be very angry and give you a kick. So I'm always cautious before I get to an animal. So I talk to the owner and they can tell me the dog is very calm, I can handle, or the dog is very aggressive, doesn't like to be touched, so that we can proceed with caution. So I am always nervous sometimes when I've not met the dog before, but after meeting for the first time, second time, third time, now I'm a bit more comfortable.
All right. That's just good advice, period. When you're meeting dogs or cats that you've never interacted before. And yeah, camels, you know, they look nice and furry, but they can have a little bit of a temper. So yeah. All right. Very cool. Well, if our 2nd and 3rd graders are there, if you want to unmute your microphone, we'd love to grab a question or two from your group. If for some reason you're not able to unmute, that's perfectly fine. There's the private chat, kind of looks like a speech bubble. You could type a question or two in there and I can keep an eye out for it. I don't see them unmuting, so maybe they can't unmute today. But 2nd and 3rd graders, use that private chat and send us a couple questions and we can make sure that they get to Jessicah. Okay, well, let's get another question here. Let's visit a few camera groups again. Miss Collins, Miss Darling's crew, do we have another question? I think they do. All right.
Go ahead,
go.
Do you usually take care of the animals outside, or do you take them in and give them medication?
And keep them inside.
Yeah.
Keep them inside, take it to a facility or a clinic. So most of the time, our communities are always moving. So sometimes I meet a dog today, and when I come back tomorrow, they've already moved away. So it's quite it's very interesting. So when we had the drought last year, some of them, I didn't see them for a whole year. And they went away the following day. I was wondering, where are the dogs? They're like, we've already moved away. We are thousands of kilometers away. So it's quite diverse. So most of the time we go to them because they're moving a lot. So we drive to them. If we're able to give them medication that can take them for long, we do that because they're always moving, because their priority is having livestock, pasture and water for their livestock. So we have to adapt with them. So we're always moving with them.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Great question.
Good question.
I'm going to grab another one here from YouTube. And this is a question about the community. Did you find at the beginning that it was hard to talk to them about the importance of the vaccines? Were they not, did it take some time for them to buy in, I guess?
Yes, that's a really good question. I think it's very important to ask yourself, especially when you're working with a local community that really values the dog. So it's even a good thing that they would be concerned first because they really love their dogs. I was a bit lucky because before we started the mobile veterinary unit, Ewaso Lions had already started doing vaccinations before. But before they started the vaccination, it took time because they have to trust you first, because they're entrusting their dog to you and they're trusting their livelihood to you because because livestock is their livelihood. So it takes time. Even now that we have the mobile veterinary unit, it still takes time. Some of them are still not sure whether, like the first time we were doing population control, and it was the first time for many of them to see a dog going under anesthesia, and they were shocked. Will this dog really wake up? We don't know whether we can trust you, but the dog woke up and it was fine. And in the evening, it was already guarding the homestead. So they trust you with time. So it took time because they didn't know me. They know Ewaso Lions, but they don't know Jessicah as an individual. So with time, they have come to trust me and feel more comfortable with me. So it takes time.
All right. Miss Plants Crew has another question for us. Let's bring them in.
So I have heard like if when the camels if camels dies, then it will it will burst, like it will become like a balloon, and its weight and everything will be big, and if you hear it, it will just burst. Is it true?
That's a very interesting question. For the animals that I've seen here, we have not had that, but it is very true that some diseases may cause the tummy to become very bloated and very big. That example is anthrax in livestock. So the tummy becomes very big because the bacteria causes, a lot of gas to be produced. So it can happen. It becomes very big. So that can happen, but we have not encountered that. On a normal day-to-day, the camels don't bloat out and burst out, but the tummy can become very big because it's bacteria that's producing a lot of gas in the tummy.
All right, thank you. So, we got someone here. Let's let him in. Go ahead.
I have a question. Have you ever treated sea animals, and how did you?
Have I ever?
Have you ever treated sea animals?
Sea animals. Oh, that's a very interesting question. Yes, I have. I have treated a couple of turtles and terrapins before I moved into lion conservation. So yes, I have. But most of the animals that we get here that live in water are mostly freshwater because our coast is quite far. So we have a lot of terrapins that are living in freshwater bodies that you can encounter.
All right, very cool. All right, I am going to grab one or two questions from YouTube. If either of our classrooms, any of the camera classrooms have a final question, just put somebody up front so I see them at the camera as well. But I want to start with another group question from Ottawa. And they're wondering, do you have kind of like a favorite animal story, maybe working with an animal?
A favorite animal story. Maybe I can give one of a dog called Pili Pili. It's a very tiny puppy. We met her when she was really tiny, and she had parvovirus, so we treated her for a very long time. And then one day we were in the kids' camp, the camp that we have for children, and we see this dog running towards me and Solomon, and wondering, who is this dog running towards us and bolting towards us? And when we got there, they were like, this is Pili Pili, the dog that you treated when she was very tiny, and she still remembers you and completely loves you. So we stayed with her through the kids' camp. And just after we had left for our camp, she was bitten by, we suspect, a scorpion. And it became really dramatic. Everyone was calling us. And we went back and we treated her again. And then we left her. After a couple of days, she was completely fine. And I think she has become one of the true testament of how much people have now come to trust us. And we have seen her go through these diseases and the impact of the veterinary work, and seeing her recover and being sick again and recover. And now she's a big dog and strong and resilient. And it's just, she's an amazing story for the local community of how much the vet work has impact. And she completely loves us, as opposed to some other dogs that are wondering, you castrated me, I don't think I like you. So she's really lovely.
Fair enough. Well, I can see some faces at cameras, but before we slide over to those, I want to grab one more here from YouTube. Is a camel the biggest animal you've ever treated?
I have treated an elephant that's slightly bigger. But yes, within the domestic animal species, the camel is very big, because you can have a camel as big as 800, 1 ton big. Wow. And how tiny I am, as you can see on the screen. So that's quite an adventure. Yes.
All right, very cool. New York, what's your question?
How long does it usually take to treat an animal? with like a disease?
That's a very good question, especially now that we are talking, our community moves quite really fast in search of pasture, but it really depends on the disease. When we're thinking about the infectious diseases, one, rabies unfortunately does not have a treatment, so that's very unfortunate, and that's why it's pretty serious for us. But canine distemper takes time. When we had the outbreak of canine distemper, we would take even about 2 weeks of every day going back to the same dog, giving him fluids and intensive treatment. So sometimes it can take very long to treat an animal. So it can even take 2 weeks, even 3 weeks of going back every day or every other day just to ensure this dog is fine to go on its own and move.
All right, great question. And I can see that it's, why it's so important to get the vaccines done, right? Have them vaccinated and protected against some of these diseases so those big processes don't have to come through. And I think
For sure.
Yeah. And
And imagining, sorry.
No,
and
go ahead.
imagining, yes, and just saying how important it is, because it's going to be pretty hard for the wildlife veterinarian to intervene in wildlife species. So you can imagine I'm doing all that for a domestic animal species. How much more will it be difficult for a lion to do that every day? And hence why we're really working towards ensuring there are no diseases crossing over.
Absolutely. I think our second and third graders turned their camera on, so let's jump in there. Hey, second and third graders, how we doing?
Right here.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I have a question. What type of animals live longer?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I would say within the wildlife species, we have elephants staying for a long time within this landscape. So we have very old elephants that have tusks that even reach to the ground, that they have to lift their head to be able to walk. So we have really old elephants, and then other domestic animal species and wildlife coming after. And even tortoises live quite long, I must say. Yes.
Yeah, I was just checking online, 60 to 70 years for an elephant. That's pretty impressive.
That's
Yeah.
really long.
All right. Do you guys, since you've only had one question, you want to grab it? Do you have another one there? There we go.
Hi. When an animal gets injured, how do you take them?
All right. So most of the injuries we have gotten in donkeys and camels. So that entails mostly wounds, so that there's either puncture wounds from the claws or bite marks from the wildlife species, either lion or hyena or the other species. So it involves quite a lot of cleaning the wound. Sometimes you may need even to do a minor surgery and stitch the skin together so that you can heal faster. But a lot of it is doing a lot of wound management, cleaning the wound every day so that you ensure that it's not infected, and then it heals on its own really fast.
Where you were born?
And I was born in Africa.
Oh,
Yes.
Very cool. Where were you born in Africa?
I was born in Kenya. I was not born within this community, but just a neighboring community that is also pastoralist. So my parents also keep their banks with sheep and goats and camels. So that is where I have grown up, not too far from here.
And you said, I think our student said that you were born in Africa. Where were you born?
I was born in Eritrea.
Oh, Ethiopia?
Eritrea.
Oh, Eritrea. Very cool.
Hmm.
Very cool.
No, not too far from Kenya.
All right. Great question, second and third graders. Awesome.
Hi.
Oh, one more. Perfect.
And how do you cook the food?
Food.
Oh,
For the
how do I
animals?
cook food here? For me?
Yes.
Or for the animals? For me?
Animals. Yes.
And the animals, the dog. So what happens, because it's very far, we don't have a lot of dog food available. What the community do is the food that they eat, they also give it to their dogs. So if they're having meat, there's a lot of meat because they have a lot of sheep and goat. They also give a portion for the dog. So the dogs are fed every day in the evening, because in the morning they're going out to herd the whole day, and then they come back at night. So at night, they know it's their time to be fed. So they have their own plates. Every dog has their plate. And the women and the warriors who have gone out to hunt, they're the ones who give the dog food. So they eat what the people are eating. So there's meat, there's milk, there's quite a variety of what people eat.
All right.
Thank you.
I want to get to Miss Plant's class because someone's been waiting there for a little bit. So let's get them up there. All right.
I have a question. How many animals do you guys have? Like how many animals?
Yeah, like animals in the community.
Yeah, in the community.
In the community. So for the dogs so I'm only talking about one conservancy, but it's a big landscape. As I said, we've vaccinated over 6,000 and they keep moving into the conservancy and out of the conservancy that we are based. But within this conservancy that I'm based, we have 800 dogs, we have about 200 cats, and sheep and goat, I can't even estimate, thousands and thousands of sheep and goat, and probably hundreds of camels. And then not to mention the wildlife species. We have a lot of elephants, we have a lot of jackals and hyenas. We have, in fact, there was just one at night yesterday here. So we have lions that live outside within our conservancy here. So it's quite diverse, but a lot of domestic animal species because it's a pastoralist community.
All right. So I'm sure that keeps you very, very busy.
Yes.
Okay, go for it. One more.
Have you ever got a disease while taking care of an animal?
No, I have not. But I have gotten a scratch from a cat before. So that's why you have to be really careful when you're restraining the animal. But I have not gotten any disease. We always take care. We wear our masks. We put on gloves. We make sure that we are given vaccinations before in case it's an infectious disease. So we are always prepared because there are many diseases that can come to us as we're working to prevent diseases from wildlife to domestic animals. So we always protect ourselves. We always change our clothes and disinfect them when we come to camp. So we always ensure that those diseases don't come to us.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, Jessicah, I want to start with a huge shout out to you and a huge shout out to Ewaso Lions. We love connecting with you and other members of the team, Toby, Shivani, Muntelli. You have a great team around you, and I know there's so many others out in the community. Generia, the Warrior Watch. I mean, there's so much that you have going on. So thank you so much for all the great work that you're doing in your community. I know it's probably not easy, and I know there's probably tough days, but I know there's probably lots of days that it just feels so rewarding. And
Yes, thank you so much, Joe, for having us. It's always an honor to be able to share the work that we're doing. And we are very privileged to be able to do that work, to be able to conserve lions and other wild carnivores and also help the people that live alongside the wildlife. So thank you so much for having us. And thank you for the wonderful questions from the children. Very nice and interesting.
All right. Absolutely. Thank you so much to our camera groups. Thank you so much to our YouTube classrooms. Thanks for playing some Kahoot with us, and of course those great questions. We are going to sign off for today. I hope everyone has a great weekend and check out all the events we have coming up because there's usually something going on every day. So thanks so much, everybody. Jessicah, thank you so much. Say hi to the team, and hopefully we see you soon.
Yes, sure. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Jessicah.
Thank you.